Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia. Welcome to a Bandit Network reform overview. Now we've been meaning to do a Bandit Network reform guide for a while, but first I thought the best thing is to do an overview of all 72 different Bandit Network reforms to give you guys a clear idea of what's present for the Bandit reforms, because they are very different from our traditional reforms that was introduced in the Han Empire factions as well as the Yellow Turban factions. So I thought it's probably best if we do an overview first. So jumping into it, as I just mentioned, there are a total of 72 Bandit Network reforms, and they're tied to the map instead of any unique reform tree. And each commandery on the map, as well as some external part of the map that's linked to nomadic tribes, are each present with one such reform that you can research. And there's 4 different types of Bandit Network reforms. They're clandestine and corrupt, and there's 7 of these. And these reforms focuses on income, spies, and administration. And these will be blue on the reform map. Next we have faith and folly, and there are 9 reforms present in this category, and they focus on corruption reduction and population growth as well as other bonuses, and these will be purple on the reform map. And then you have tribes and tradition, which are green, and there's 21 such reforms focusing on looting and unit stats. Lastly, you have the majority chunk of the reforms being outlaws and outcasts, because remember, we are bandits, and there are 35 such reforms focusing on banditry income and unit boost. So if we look at the map real quick here, we can see that you have reforms all over the place attached to each commandery. And the whole purpose of this map is so that if you control at least one county in any given commandery, you can research the given reform in that county a bit faster, about twice the speed. And the whole idea behind this is that you're not actually researching for like a ground-shattering reform, you're really making a local connection to whatever type of underground forces are in that commandery. So that's why you have clandestine and corrupt, which is really a Han Empire, corrupt or, defecting troops. Faith and folly are remnants of different religious groups or the Yellow Turbans. Tribes and traditions are more of your nomadic tribes or minority tribes. And lastly, outlaw and outcast are just your traditional bandit attachments. And they put a lot of effort in developing these reforms, and it's really exciting to see it on the map. And let's take the example of, say, the Chen Commandery. So the Chen Commandery has the reform of Sanctuary of the Prince of Chen. And you can see this is a blue reform because the Prince of Chen, Liu Chong, is a Han Empire relationship. So it makes sense that it's part of the Han Empire category of reforms. And this takes 8 turns to research. As we said before, if you have any piece of the county, these timers will decrease by half. And you can further decrease the time needed by increasing your own research rate. You start the game off with 100% research rate, and if you can boost it to 200, you basically half the amount of time you need. If you boost it to 300, you divide by 3, and so on. So these goes pretty quickly. If you're able to snowball your county control and build a lot of research rate increases, you can get most reforms by 1 turn pretty easily, especially if you control the county. But as you can see, not only does this reform provide bonuses, it also provides additional unlock of a unit. And you can recruit 1 additional repeating crossbow unit from this reform. And the flavor text of these reforms are what make them really stand out in my eyes. So for example, here it says, the lands of Chen are historically the seat of Prince of Chen, Liu Chong, a fair and wise administrator. He sees his land as more of a haven for refugees and those seeking respite from the all-consuming war. Although affiliated with the empire by no less than his own blood, Chen nevertheless remained a more free and liberal place than might otherwise be expected, and a never-do-well may make more progress there than they could imagine. ... So it's nice to see that the game designers are drawing relationship to actual historical events within certain counties or commanderies. to name these reforms and also attach the proper units that you associate with that type of story. So for example here, Liu Chong is famous for his crossbow units, so that's why you unlock a repeating crossbow. Now I would love to do more shorter series covering certain reforms and the story behind them. This story we all kind of know because Liu Chong was introduced in Mandate of Heaven, but there's a lot of hidden nuggets that's all over the map, and we'll get another series to do those. But for this overview here, what we're more interested in learning is what type of bonuses we can get from all the reforms in the Bandit Network. So I divided the reforms into civil bonuses and military bonuses. So first we'll go over the civil bonuses. If you unlock all the reforms on the Bandit Network, you'll gain access to 2 additional administrator slots, 2 assignments, minus 10% overall construction cost, minus 20% construction cost for mines, minus 60 corruption faction-wide, 16k population growth per county, 15 faction support, 5 public order, 25% food from farming, and 50% food from fishing. Now these are all the Commandery management bonuses, and they're quite nice. Now, Commandery management isn't the biggest deal for bandits because you're really focused on county growth and not really controlling the whole Commandery, and the administrator or underlings are a bit weaker. The assignments is nice. The construction cost is okay because everything is quite cheap to build for the bandits, so it's not going to really play a big role. I think the game is just trying to make it a little bit fair between the base Han factions and the bandit factions to include things like 20% mine discount, which is also on the Han reform tree. The minus 60% corruption reduction faction-wide is actually pretty good. Now, you don't have access to a state workshop, so the most common form of corruption reduction for most of the factions in the game is gone for the bandits, but this flat 60% is excellent, and if you get an underling in certain key commanderies to help reduce corruption farther and put in some items on your leaders or have leaders that have the honest trait, which reduces corruption by another 5%, you should easily hit faction-wide minus 100 or 90 something corruption reduction in all your counties, allowing you to expand as much as you want. The 16k population growth is also excellent. It's a nice little bonus to help you gain income from all sources, which is added in patch 1.5. Otherwise, most of your income source is going to be banditry, and the traditional peasantry income growth rate isn't going to affect you as much with population. Faction support is not really important. Public order is actually a negative because a high public order, you actually get some penalties as bandits. But overall, pretty strong set of bonuses. Next, you have the income multipliers. You get 112% banditry income, 40% peasantry income, 70% commerce income, 95% industry income, 25% silk and spice income, and 5% all income sources. So these are just nice to have in the background. Now, most of your income is going to be banditry income unless you don't convert a lot of the Han buildings and counties. Then you have access to the same peasantry, commerce, and industry buildings that you would have seen with most Han factions. Just take these stats and apply them to our Commandery building guides for the bandits and use that to judge whether you want to focus on a certain type of income or not. So industry income would be great, for example, a 95% overall boost if you can keep some level 5 mines from the Han faction instead of switching them over to the level 3 maxed out bandit versions that just provide banditry income. Now, silk and spice is usually not available to the bandits unless you don't convert those counties when you capture them. So that's something you have to weigh and balance yourself to see if you have enough income to give up some banditry and just stick to the traditional Han buildings. So it's kind of up to you. And next we have Spies and Diplomacy. Here you get 3 additional spy positions, minus 15% spy cost, plus 5 cover per turn, 10 diplomatic relations, 2 trade agreements, and 50% trade influence. So these are also just nice passive bonuses you can get in your faction. The spy position is quite nice considering that spies are very interesting given there's new turncoat mechanic that you can recruit a lot of key characters away from enemy factions rather than having to wait for your character to join their court before you can do stuff. So these are all welcome bonuses. And lastly, you just have some bit of character bonuses like overall satisfaction for all characters, 16. You have Champion, Vanguard, Commander, Strategist, and Sentinel classes with 8 satisfaction each, and minus 25% character salary and 10% character experience. So because of the title changes, the character salary reduction is actually very nice because all characters now start out with 200 base salary versus the traditional 100. So it's very key to get some character salary reduction in all sorts of game, whether you play the bandits or not, because your characters will eat into quite a bit of your income. And if you somehow reduce your character salaries by a lot, you're actually going to save a lot of money during the course of your campaign. So next we have the military bonuses, which is probably the most interesting portion of the bandit reform. First, you have combat bonuses. You had 12% damage increase to melee infantry, 8 melee infantry evasion, 15% melee cavalry damage, 19% melee range block chance, 15% melee cavalry fatigue resistance, spear infantry damage increased by 15%, spear infantry charge bonus by 5, spear infantry armor increased by 3%, shock cavalry damage by 11, shock cavalry charge bonus by 5, shock cavalry armor by 5%, shock cavalry speed by 10%, range damage increased by 16%, range armor piercing damage increased by 10%, range firing rate increased by 10%, range ammo 10%, and lastly, charge speed increased by 10 for all units. Now these are not going to be game changing, and the bandit faction actually suffer quite a bit from the lack of upper tier units in the late game, because they have access to just, bandit tier units, and they don't have access to the imperial units. You can't get them dragon units. Your best unit in the late game is probably your emperor units, protector of heaven, defender of earth, and those are, spear infantry and range units. It's nice to see a lot of ranged bonuses because those are going to get you in the early game as you play more of skirmishing playstyle. Especially if you play Yanbai Hu, you can play a lot of poison arrow playstyle with bandit units and try to hide them with stock. Other than that, there's not much to say about these bonuses. The next category is what's really nice for the bandit faction, and that's army discounts. Here you have sword and shield infantry upkeep minus 20%, melee infantry recruitment minus 5%, melee cavalry recruitment minus 20%, melee cavalry upkeep minus 20%, spear infantry recruitment minus 35%, spear infantry upkeep minus 40%, shot cavalry recruitment minus 15%, shot cavalry upkeep minus 30%, range recruitment minus 15%, and range upkeep minus 30%. So these numbers are amazing. It looks kind of small, but you got to remember, if you refer back to our Bandit County guides, you get additional discounts from county buildings that provides recruitment discounts for these units. So you can almost recruit free units of all types for Bandit faction in the late game, or close to free. So you can field massive armies that are super cheap. Now, the quality of the troop, as we just mentioned, isn't going to be as great, but you can definitely play a style where you overwhelm the enemy with numbers. So all these data look great, especially the spear infantry upkeep minus 40% is super promising because, as I mentioned before, Protector of Heavens, or like the Emperor Spear unit, is basically your best late game unit. So being able to recruit that and keep it at a low cost is going to be essential to your army composition in the late game. Next, we have morale bonuses. Overall morale for all units plus 4, morale when defending plus 5, melee cavalry morale plus 4, shot cavalry morale plus 5, and finally spear infantry morale plus 9. So as you can see, spear infantry once again get bulk of the bonuses, which I think is purposely designed this way because your late game unit is going to be largely spear infantry, and if you could play into more of an ambush playstyle, whether you play as Zhang Yan or the other two bandits, you can kind of overwhelm them with a very high tier spear infantry to just charge out with high morale and make them have charge bonuses, charge damage, all sorts of bonus added on. And lastly, we have other types of army bonuses, such as increase army count by 3, increase seasonal deployment by 2, range starting rank +2, polearm starting rank +3, bandit starting rank +1, shot cavalry starting rank +1, melee infantry starting rank +1, melee cavalry starting rank +1, campaign movement range +30%, replenishment 5% increase, and loot when raiding +55%. So these bonuses are sort of random all over the place. A few key things to note here is that army count is great because you have shared the spoils as one way to boost your income. So the more armies you can field, the more armies you can use to share the spoils and help boost your food and income in the early, mid, and late game. Seasonal deployment is also very key because the conscription building is not available for the bandit faction, so you're stuck with 3 seasonal deployment limit until you get these 2 reforms, or until you capture an enemy commandery where a conscription building has been built. In that case, keep that conscription building, because being restricted by seasonal deployment is going to hurt you all throughout the game, whether you want to heal some generals or you just want to redeploy some of your army to other parts of the map. These starting rank bonuses are just okay. They reduced a lot of the rank bonuses when you rank up, so higher ranked troops aren't as good. You're better off trying to recruit more premium troops now that the recruitment costs are all lower with pretty stable upkeep costs for all sorts of units. The campaign movement range bonus is very, very good. Both of these are in the Liang province in the northwest corner of the map, and they're pretty key because it's very likely that you get faction-wide bonuses or character bonuses with high cunning, where your army is always going to be at max loot even when you don't raid. And at max loot, bandit armies lose 25% movement range. So you're kind of penalized for having bonuses to what more traditionally we'll call military supply, but for bandits they're called loot. So making up for those lost movement with this campaign movement range boost is very key. 5% replenishment is nice, but it's not really needed because you could end the turn in share the spoils anytime you want to gain additional 25% replenishment, so you're easily at over 50%. So that's pretty much all the bonuses you can get from the 72 bandit reforms, and I hope this gives you a pretty clear idea of what you're capable of doing as the bandit faction. And going forward, I plan on doing a few more bandit guides, one focused on the exploits, like how you can combine your counties and your reforms to get free units, for example, or how you can increase your income by using some of the stances. We'll combine that into one guide. And other than that, I do want to revisit a lot of these reforms individually by looking at their flavor text to tell you guys a little bit about the historical context that these reforms were picked from, similar to how I showcased the Sanctuary of Chen a bit earlier in this overview. So hope you guys enjoyed this one, and see you all next time. Bye!